Hey, Dethroners, welcome back to the Dethroning Your Inner Critic YouTube channel. I'm Joanna Kleinman, psychotherapist, empowerment coach, and CEO of the Dethroning Your Inner Critic coaching and consulting company. And I want to talk to you today about 10 truths that will change your entire life. Now, this conversation today is going to strike deep to the core of what it means to live a fulfilling life and some of the mistakes that you and I have been making in how we're living our life, and most importantly, what we can do about it. I have a profound invitation for you today to really consider your own experience with feeling like in some way you or some part of your life is just not enough, and how that continues to impact you, and the opportunity that you have today to reconnect with your authentic self. First and foremost, I want to acknowledge you for choosing to listen to this podcast today, because that shows that you're committed to creating a better life. And that's just so incredible that you're taking this time for yourself. I am on a mission to inspire and empower you with the tools and the resources that you need to create a better life. Let's dive in today about these truths. The first truth is to understand your automatic self. That is what I call your inner critic self. So I want to first start with an understanding of what your inner critic self really is. This is the part of us that was formed when we were really young. No human being escapes this. And what happens when we are really young is that our brains literally get imprinted with a pattern of neurons. And why do those specific neurons fire together? Because in some way, when we felt emotionally unsafe, this is how we developed the feeling that we could protect ourselves from any potential psychological dangers. Okay, so these thoughts and emotions of worry and attempts to control parts of our life were created a long time ago. And right now, what your inner critic essentially is just that pattern of neurons in your brain that keeps repeating over and over again and dragging us back into these same old patterns whenever we are in the face of something that we're fearful of, something that's unpredictable, or something that's unknown. Okay, so I think the main thing is to understand that we all have this biological hardwired need to control our life, to be the master of how our life unfolds. And this is in our relationships, our businesses, our careers, how we're perceived by other people. Okay, so that all of that is driven by this inner anxiety. And that inner anxiety is connected to our own sense of unworthiness. Now, we all have that place, whether we're willing to see it or not. We all have that place where we feel not enough and we feel in some way unworthy. For many years, I had no idea that I was even an anxious person. I thought, I just focused on my future, and I thought that that was the key to my future turning out the way I wanted it to. Okay. So my awakening has been a gradual unfolding. That's why I now devote all of the work in my life to helping others awaken. Because when we begin to discover that it's really our own inner lack that's driving all of this need to predict and control and essentially micromanage everything around us and every part of how our life unfolds, now we have the opportunity to look at that and to heal that unconscious wound that we have inadvertently been dragging around with us, right? And we can now start to awaken to a different way to not only feel about ourselves and our life right now, but a different way to design the most important parts of our life now and moving forward. Because I truly believe that the future of our planet lies in the awakening from within ourselves, the ability to rewire a very different mind in which we stop this striving and overworking and over worrying and over functioning. So you may have the best vision for the life that you want to be living, but if you're operating from a deep place of disconnect within yourself, you're never going to live that life. No matter what goals you achieve, you're never going to feel the fulfillment, the peace, the joy, the satisfaction that we're all so desperately craving, especially in our world today. Okay. Now, I want you to think about this for a moment. Okay. We've got this inner critic self that feels weirdly comfortable. It feels oddly familiar to try to control our future by engaging in the habit of worrying. We get sucked into those same automatic patterns of worry thoughts, worry emotions, worry body sensations, and behaviors that stem from that anxiety. This is the very thing that, first of all, keeps us playing small. It keeps us in our comfort zone. It keeps us in not having the relationships that we want to have with ourselves, not having the relationships that we want to have with the most important people in our lives, our kids, our significant others, our parents, our sisters, our brothers, our friends. So that leads me to truth number 2. And that is that your habit of worry is automatic and it's never going away. So let's talk about, why do we keep worrying? Okay. We keep worrying because, remember, I was talking before about how it's oddly comfortable to try to control our future. Our worry makes us feel like we're controlling our future. Worrying gives us the illusion of control and safety, but this is the trap. Because we stay in this pattern, as soon as our minds drag us to those same old automatic thoughts, we stay in that pattern. And that's the very thing that stops us from really reaching our full potential, really blowing the lid off of what's possible in our life. Okay. We're all here. I think you are listening to this right now because we really all want to live a more conscious life, right? We all want to be able to differentiate between our old automatic identity, that automatic mind, and we want to learn how to rewire a new mind to live a different life, to feel a different way. Okay. And many of us that are doing this kind of work, we're already stretching ourselves beyond what maybe the average person is engaging in their life. Okay. So the thing is that every time we reach a new level in our lives, new level, new devil, right? Our inner critic doesn't go away. It comes back with the same old habits of worry and control. And this is now truth number 3, which is that forever and ever and ever, we will continue to be in a cycle of growth. We're never going to stay at our highest level because we're always growing and evolving. So as soon as we get to the next level, guess what? We're at the bottom of the next level again. So building a new muscle, right? Rewiring those different neurons in our brains is about being able to recognize when we've been hijacked by our inner critic and to continue to practice returning ourselves to this very moment. This is the hardest practice, okay? But the present moment, this is where all of our freedom lies. Our inner critic creates the internal disconnection from our ability to see who we really are, because our inner critic is either focusing on our past, which is already dead and gone, or our future, which is already imagined. So when we're in one of those two places, when we're either ruminating about our past or worrying about how our future is going to unfold, or maybe how our children's future is going to unfold, or whatever it is that is where we're focused on that future self, we're hidden from our true authentic self. We have no access to our own inner knowing. And for many of us, we actually became disconnected from that inner knowing way back in childhood. So our current suffering is really just a mirror to our own unhealed self. Okay? Because this is what I want you to understand. What drives so much of what we want in life is our deep need to feel worthy, to feel seen and valued and validated. And we try to get our worthiness and our value and our validation from a lot of measures that have been handed down to us. So no matter what our life looks like, there's always the next measure, right? So think about that. You've always had ways of measuring your worthiness. It could be what degree you have, or how much money you're making, or how high up you are in your company, or how happy you are, or how happy and successful your children are, right? These measures all cause us to operate from a state of lack and scarcity and unworthiness. And so we're looking for our future self, our future life to fix the scarcity and unworthiness. And this is where so much of our anxiety and control comes from. So truth number 4 is developing the ongoing ability, the daily ability to practice presence and surrender. Because when we're truly present in this present moment, we're free. But that level of freedom can actually feel dangerous and out of control. Because remember, our inner critic has spent our whole life trying to control and ward off danger. So our inner critic feels that worry is necessary. So if we're truly just in this present moment, that feels a little unsteady. Like, wait a minute, don't I need to be focused on these potential dangers? So the payoff that we get from keeping the old patterns of worry in place is that we get to stay in that illusion of control, that illusion of a container of safety and predictability. Listen, we wouldn't keep engaging in the patterns of worry if we weren't in some way getting a payoff from it, okay? But if we're in the pattern of worrying, we can't be free, right? We can't be free. And when we're not free, we can't create what we really want, right? So we stay in the worry, and our inner critic comes in and say, okay, I better stay in the level of life that feels kind of familiar to me. Because if I'm really just surrendered and I'm engaging in this, just being in this present moment, it just feels too scary and too unpredictable. Okay. So, 5th truth, in some weird way, you get a payoff from keeping yourself stuck in your inner critic patterns. All right. So it's almost comical when you think about it. We try to control so much of life, but this idea of control is all an illusion. Okay. See, there's nothing really happening that's dangerous other than our perceived danger in our own mind. Okay. So we keep ourselves in this matrix of fear because in some weird way, not being afraid feels too weird. If we don't worry and we just surrender, there's the potential that everything could go wrong, right? So our inner critic wants us to believe that worrying is the way to ensure safety. That's just a trap to keep us stuck. Because the truth is that life is not controllable. It's not predictable. If we try to control the uncontrollable and the unpredictability of life, that's how we create our anxiety. That's a big piece of wisdom I want you to take away. We are the creators of our own suffering because there's so much in life that we've been brainwashed to believe lies within our control. But all we really have control over is this very moment. So ask yourself this question. Am I thinking and feeling and acting in a way right now that leaves me feeling the way that I want to feel about myself and my life? Present to gratitude for all that I already have. Present to the abundance that surrounds me every day. Present to love, to what I love about myself, to what I love about the people in my life? Or am I thinking, feeling, and acting in a way that makes me feel inadequate, anxious, small, not good enough? Am I thinking about the things that I don't have in my life instead of the things that I do? Am I thinking about the people in my life from a place of where they're not enough and where I want to fix and change and control them? So there's a paradox here. The freedom that we're really craving lies in the practice of letting go, not control. It lies in the practice of living in the present moment, right? So following our instincts to control, right? We do have these innate instincts to try to control danger. But following those instincts, that's going to create the opposite effect, right? Instead of making us feel more peaceful and calm, we're going to feel more out of control, even though we think that worrying will make us be more in control. Okay. So now we're on to truth number 6, which is about trusting the universe. Why is it so hard to trust that the universe has our back? So we often have these big visions for the life that we're designing. And there are a lot of parts of our life that don't match that vision. It hasn't happened yet. What if those parts of our life haven't happened yet because we're not ready for it to happen? See, our inner critic believes that our life should look a different way. And it doesn't look a different way because we're not doing enough, right? But that's the old pattern talking. See, there's a bigger picture playing out. And we don't know all of the pieces of that bigger picture. Think about the most important, pivotal, life-changing things that have ever happened to you. Meeting your spouse, having your children, landing the job of your dreams. There were a lot of puzzle pieces that came before that. But when the rubber really met the road, when that thing actually happened, it kind of just fell into your lap. Think about that for a moment. We're not supposed to have more than we have right now. We can keep taking actions in the present moment. And those actions are going to take us where we're meant to be. But it's not up to us to know where we're meant to go. So we need to relax into the flow of energy, right? Are we taking actions right now that feel good, that make us feel expansive, that make us get present to gratitude and peace and joy? That's following the flow of energy. If we keep following the flow of energy instead of trying to swim against the current, that is how we can trust that the universe will take us where we're supposed to go. And our one and only job is just to keep grounding ourselves in the here and now and taking the action that feels right now. Not the action that's going to be perfect, that's going to get us to have the future unfold exactly the way that we want it to be. No. So if we are able to be in the here and now, lean into that flow of energy, trust that the universe is going to take us where we're supposed to go, Now we can get to truth number 7, which is about embodying unconditional acceptance of ourselves, of other people, and of all of life. So unconditional acceptance is really about learning to reparent ourselves, to feel enough without needing external validation, not from our spouse, our children, our career, our parents, our bank accounts. And this is really hard because there are a lot of cultural narratives that have pervaded our minds for most of our life. Came from our parents, maybe our parents' parents. It came from the cultural messages that continue to be shoved down our throats, right? And, we become this culture that's so overly focused on this ideal called happiness, right? And so if we're looking at this thing called happiness, chasing happiness, how are we going to be in this very moment? We can't, because we're comparing ourselves to all these ideas of what happiness means. And all we can see is where we are, what we have, who we are, who we're married to, what our kids are doing, what our life looks like, how our business is unfolding. It's not enough. So I got to get myself, I got to get them, I got to get parts of my life to a different level. That's when I'm going to be happy. So it's our inner critic that creates this inner void of unworthiness. And that has us continue to search for things outside ourselves because we never cultivated our worthiness from inside. Mastering your mind with the mind method is about embodying unconditional acceptance for yourself and for all of your life right now. That's what my work is about. Deconstructing the patterns of thought that have pervaded our minds and our belief system in such harmful ways. But those belief systems are so transparent. It's like boiling a frog. Human beings get used to certain conditions, used to certain measures. Even if we're uncomfortable, we're going to stay within the confines of that old mind and that old inner critic identity. And we're not able to get out because it feels safe. It feels predictable. It's the way we've always done it. And that's how the transmission of these pervasive belief systems get passed down from generation to generation. This is how pain gets passed down from generation to generation. And I want you to break free of this harmful conditioning so that not only can you be free, but your children can be free and their children can be free. See, this whole idea of what a successful life means, it's a myth. It comes from this idea of achievement and wealth and competition and climbing some ladder. And from a young age, that's how we're trained. We go off to college to become who we're supposed to be, to live in this kind of house, to raise these kinds of kids. And today, our children don't even have a childhood anymore, right? Because of our anxiety. Not only do we have this anxiety to control our own future, now we have the anxiety to control our children's future, okay? So it really does get passed down, and you can see, right? Many people, either you've got this idea that your child needs to be, a superstar or get really good grades or go to a particular college. Nothing wrong with having those aspirations. But in our culture, that's become our sole focus of what a successful life looks like. And so we can't see who we really are because we're never good enough. We're never measuring up. And that's how we keep perpetuating this experience of lack. This is why there are so many people who are at least unfulfilled, at most downright depressed, right? This is why there's such a pervasive sense of unhappiness, because we've become this culture that's chasing happiness. And chasing happiness is a disease of our inner critic self. It's a toxic way to live, because when our focus is on this ideal version of happiness, we can't be in this very moment. We're only focused on future happiness and getting to that ideal goal someday. And that's how we can't awaken. We can't awaken to the joy, the freedom, the gratitude, the abundance that lies only in the experience of the here and now. Now, listen, I'm guilty of this. This is why I created the mind method. This is why I created the Mastering Your Mind program. I was caught in this trap. I parented my 3 kids from my own fear and worry and anxiety. I've apologized to them about it. I'm still apologizing to them, right? Now, I didn't care about grades or being a superstar athlete or where they went to college necessarily, but I was obsessed with their happiness. Right. So when my kids were struggling with social anxiety, or I didn't think that they had formed deep enough friendships early on, I thought there was something wrong. And I thought that it was a reflection of what I wasn't doing. And so I needed to figure out how to fix it. So I gave them the message that there was something wrong with them. So that was my inner critic raising my kids. Right? My inner critic for so long needed my children to be a reflection of what a good mom I was, right? So my inner critic needed to fix them for me to be happy and fulfilled and at peace, or I was not okay if they were not okay. So there's an awakening of humanity that's available about seeing this automatic pattern within ourselves, because it affects every part of our life. And it affects every person in our life who's important to us, okay? We all have this innate desire to be seen and considered worthy and validated for who we are. But when we're trying to control that through other people, we want to control feeling judged. We want to control making sure no one else sees that we're unworthy. This is how we learn to hide parts of ourselves. This is how we learn to live inauthentically. And so there is an invitation for all of us to see this clearly, to awaken within ourselves. And this awakening is what allows us to be present, to create some spaciousness from within, and to let ourselves be who we already are, to let others be who they already are, and recognizing our own inner emotions that we've been trying to shove down, and really just learning to be okay with the ups and downs and the flow of all of life. Now, for many people, this just sounds too scary. It's too much in the unknown. So this is when our inner critic swoops in and tries to control the unfolding of all of it, because our inner critic wants to ensure that we're seen as worthy, which is out of our control. So our suffering is a mirror for trying to control our own deep desire and craving for significance. And unless we're willing to really be brave enough to look underneath, right, to look under the iceberg and really look at what lies hidden, that's the only way that we're going to really embody a different self and a different life. So that leads me to the 8th truth, which is about finding your empowerment and freedom only from within. So claiming your inner power means the willingness to develop your inner awareness, seeing clearly your inner critic's thoughts, your inner critic's emotions, her conditioning, her demands, her scripts, her narratives, her stories. See, when you are willing to do that deep work, now you enter a different source of power and you claim it. And that's when you won't need your life to look a certain way. You might prefer it. You might even be taking steps towards it. But when you don't need your life to look a certain way and you don't need other people's life to look a certain way, this is when you're free. This is when you start embodying a feeling of yourself and your life that is truly glorious. But it requires trust in the unknown, and a willingness to awaken to a different self. And that different self is only possible when we recognize that our fear, our suffering, our longing, our lack is really only being produced in our mind. It's like this mind-made movie we're watching because we're not in the present moment. We're not connected to our true authentic selves. What would it be like to practice unconditional acceptance of ourselves? So I said earlier that every human being desires to be seen and considered worthy, right? To have that unconditional validation for who it is that we are, right? In our essence, every human being wants to be in the presence of other people that make them feel good enough exactly as they are. But in our relationship with ourselves, we are not that for ourselves. We can do that effortlessly for others. We can give them love. We can accept them for who they are, but not for ourselves. So you and I are very much the same in that we are both human beings. We both want to embody that sense of feeling validated and seen and heard and worthy. We both want to be seen for who we are, right? We desire so much to be told by other people that we're good enough as we are, that we don't need to be perfect, right? But yet we don't do that for ourselves. So that's when parts of our life don't fit the script that our inner critic has created for us, that's when we start chasing our worthiness, right? Now, we still need to be taking actions towards our future. We're not just going to sit around and not take actions towards our desired future. But if we're experiencing freedom and peace and enoughness in this very moment, with all that I am and all I've already created and everything that already is, that's living a very different life. Because now you're living in your authentic self. You are grounded in your authentic self, not in your inner critic's anxiety and attempts to control all of the uncontrollable. See, it's your inner critic that has a false illusion of who you're supposed to be. And that's what has us hide. That's what has us play small. Because every day we wake up into feeling like we're not yet enough. And that's when we're at the effect of all of our inner critics' fantasies about what other people might think of us. And that's when we blame other people for our suffering too. You know, the only reason why people occur to us as enemies is because something they did or something they said triggered the deep pain within ourselves that we haven't yet healed. There really are no enemies out there. There are no scary humans out there. We only have these psychological enemies that are created by our own unhealed inner critic self. And that's why it's imperative that every human learn to become a parent to their own inner child. See, you would never speak to a child the way you speak to yourself. What would your life be if you could become the loving parent to your own inner child? That's the difference between living your life from your inner critic, who's basically your inner child, and living your life from your authentic self. That leads me to truth number 9. Life begins in the here and now. See, in this very moment, We're not good or bad. We are on a continuing spectrum of consciousness at any given point in time. Your consciousness right now is what it is. You might be at the very beginning of the path of this work about learning to rewire a new mind. You might be somebody that's been engaged in this work for years. But can we have compassion for our past mistakes? See, when we go back and berate ourselves for who we once were and the things that we did or didn't do that we're not proud of, that's just continuing the cycle of that low worthiness and scarcity that our inner critic creates. So when we start right here, right now, no matter what our life has been, the moment you begin to presence yourself here and now to who you already are, the moment that you start to feel inspired for the parts of life that you can feel proud of, now you're living an awakened life. And that's available to you right here, right now. Now, of course, we're always going to get sucked back into those resentments, those regrets of the past, because our inner critic wants to keep us focused there, because she believes that if we keep focusing on our past mistakes, our past failures, our past not enoughness, it'll prevent us from repeating that in the future. But that's just our old mind. So it's in our power to catch ourselves doing that. We put her right here and we go, oh, I see you there. And we rewire a new mind that can see the beauty and the abundance that this moment allows for unconditional self-acceptance, for acceptance of our inner critic self, our shadow self. See, when we accept that unconscious and automatic part of ourself, now you can not only see it in yourself, you can see it in everyone around you. And you can start to have compassion for, those people that act like third graders in your life. They're just acting from their own fears, their own unworthiness, their own self-doubt. You don't have to accept their bad behavior, but you can have some compassion for it. And you can have some compassion for yourself. So truly evolved human beings who are working on themselves, they are the most aware of their automatic selves, right? So your awakening is a calling. It's a daily cultivation. It's not a journey with an arrival point. There's no perfect way to do it. It's not a destination. It's a hard process of looking at your inner critic self in the face every day. And when you're willing to do that work, and it's not always pretty, but that's when you are willing to see your pain that you've been avoiding for so long. That's when you can see your self-sabotage, your self-imposed limitations. That's when you actually set yourself free. It's a daily practice. It takes work. That's what the mind method steps are about. And it's really about uncovering your own childhood conditioning that you've never seen. Now, we're not going to keep rehashing that childhood conditioning. We're looking at it through the lens of how am I still acting from my old childhood conditioning? You got to do the work. You got to go back and understand that you've been carrying around fears and self-judgments that you got from your parents and then made them your own, right? So really seeing what life is all about is that ultimately we think we have control and we don't have control. And when we relinquish control, that's when we're free. Which leads me to truth number 10, which is your awakening. So I said before, It's so automatic to ruminate about all that could have been, all that should have been. It's just another way your inner critic traps you from taking you out of the present moment. Your inner critic loves to do that, right? Have compassion for your inner critic the next time you catch her whipping you back into your past or thrusting you into your imagined future. But your awakening is looking at your power now. How can I align right now with that which I want to be and the future that I want to be living now? How can I surrender? How can I trust the universe to guide me towards what's meant for me? You may be listening to this podcast now because you've been guided here. When we surrender, that's when we start liberating ourselves from the pain. And that's when our inner critic self becomes smaller and we expand into the next level of ourselves. That's when we start seeing who our true authentic self really is. So the awakening comes from pain. There's no avoiding pain. It comes to all of us. I tell my clients all the time, your pain pushes you until your vision pulls you. So why are you trying to avoid your pain? Because your pain is going to show you how to accept what is, accept what isn't, and accept what's not in your control. That's your path to your peace. And that's when you'll start to see that in this present moment, all is okay right now. You already are whole. You already are complete. You already are enough. Now, many of you might be saying, I don't know how to do that because I've never felt okay. That's the work. That's the work, your willingness to see your deepest self, to own your inner power, which is abundant within all of us. But our inner critic has kept us separated from our inner power for so long. So when you really, truly awaken, that's when you stop needing your life to look a particular way, needing other people to behave a particular way. The stress and the struggle that we cause ourselves by trying to control other people and trying to get what we want out of life, the love, the validation, the respect, by controlling it all, you start to live your life in a very different way. You start to recognize that you don't need anything from anyone else, and that your one and only job is to awaken from within, to give yourself the validation, the love, the connection that you've been searching for from other people. And then that's when everything in your life truly starts to magically align with that. Now, many of us don't awaken until midlife. And that's because we've checked off many of the boxes that our inner critic prescribed for us a long time ago, right? That have been given to us by our culture and our parents. We believed if we do this and we do that and we have the children and we live in this house and, you know, that's when we're going to be happy, right? We have the corner office and we make the money and we get the promotion or we have the business, right? And for many people, you've checked off a lot of those boxes, right? That's come from your inner critic self. And now you're recognizing you're actually in a worse place today than you've ever been. Okay. So you're recognizing that a lot of the things that you thought were going to bring you joy and peace and happiness, that it's all been sort of a mirage, an illusion, a lie, that we've been sold a bag of goods. So now the invitation is to create a life that is authentically designed by your true authentic self, by your deep inner knowing, your deep inner wisdom, right? So some of you have spent your whole life checking the list, following what you've been told is the way to do life, which really is most of us. So if you are at a crossroads now and you're having trouble figuring out what is this life that's authentically mine, I want to tell you that you do not have to figure it out. All you need to do is let go of what's no longer resonating with you. Let those parts of your life fall away, maybe even fall apart, because those are the parts of your life that are based on your inner critic's prescription. So therefore, it wasn't really your authentic life. See, here's the thing. It's gonna fall apart anyway, right? So you can keep holding on to it, but eventually, whether you like it or not, it's going to happen. It's going to fall apart, because if you keep living inauthentically, an inauthentic life cannot sustain itself. It's going to fall apart. It should fall apart. But when it falls apart, we get terrified. That's when we forget to trust the universe. That's when we forget to know that there's something else that's waiting for us. That's when we have so much fear of stepping into the unknown, right? And that's when we really now start to question, who am I really? And that's where the work starts. And that question will answer itself. It's the asking of the question that will point you in the direction that's meant for you. But we're so scared that we keep trying to hold on to that old life. We keep trying to hold on to the worry and the fear and the predictability and the control. It's okay. You're not supposed to know. Okay? Your only job now is to discover your inner knowing, right? To let go of those old prescriptions that were given to us by our parents and our culture that became our inner critic self, and to now know that's not my true self. And allowing those things in our life to fall apart and continuing to lean into the question, who am I? And being okay with the not knowing. So when you're able to do that, when you're meant to have those parts of your life dissolve, that's where your life begins. So the mind method for mastering your mind, it's a step-by-step process of deconstructing your inner critic self by using your life as a laboratory of self-examination and self-discovery, right? To discover who you truly are. And it's up to you to decide that you're ready to finally give yourself the gift of discovering your authentic self and allowing your life to be your teacher, allowing every moment in your life to be the precious gift of mirroring who you really are. That's the key to your awakening. It's the key to everything you want in life. If you're interested in exploring how the Mastering Your Mind program can help you to step into your own awakening and to give you that life that you're craving, please reach out and connect with me. Go to my website, dethroningyourinnercritic.com. Schedule a clarity conversation. Let's just talk and see if this program is right for you. Thanks for listening.